Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Lucas. My colleague Mauro Inarci and I are here to present the results of a survey commissioned by the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations, an NGO. The survey was devised to gauge the attitudes and aspirations of southern Cameroonians on key aspects of their homeland, and this presentation covers our main findings. Before we start, I'd just like to say that as with any survey, there's potential sample selection bias and the possibility of duplicate responses. We've been through a verification exercise to ensure there are no duplicates, and the sample selection bias has been controlled for in our analysis. As an example, there were fewer responses from women, and so as well as examining the full survey, we've also examined a 50-50 male-female split. So with that done, we'll launch into the main results. The first point is the survey is large. There were 3,749 respondents, and this is probably the largest number of southern Cameroonians surveyed to date. The majority were from the Cameroon, almost 40%, and the results suggest a strong preference for greater autonomy. 86% of respondents chose full independence as the best form of state to address the root cause of the conflicts. 7% chose a federation and 4% a selected confederation. Only 1% chose the government-sponsored special status. And most respondents prefer a UN-backed body as a best mediator of conflict, 80% of them. 9% prefer Swiss-backed negotiations, and only 1% think the government of Cameroon's good mediator. The obvious point here is they're looking for some sort of independence. A large majority, 87%, prefer an independent judiciary system based on common law, and another 10% chose common law system controlled by central government. So together, 97% common law is seen as being extremely important. On the education side, the preference was for an Anglo-Saxon educational system. As well as that, many southern Cameroonians wanted to see a newly developed educational system. There were 38% voted for that, something specific for the situation. And most southern Cameroonians would like to see their elderly statesmen and women play a more active advisory role. As well as that, they prefer their traditional leaders to serve as custodians of culture and traditions only, as a sizable minority are happy for their chiefs to play a more active role in local admin, so long as they're exempted from political parties. 95% of the southern Cameroonians rejected the CFA as their currency, while 96% don't recommend the gendarmes as security officers, and 80% of those preferred locally versus centrally controlled police forces. So these trends are steady across all the variables we've examined, in particular gender, age groups and level of education. There are no major differences after adjusting for the gender imbalance, for example, and the same with the others. A deeper statistical analysis showed that the form of state was highly correlated with citizens' preferences for their ideal system of law, economy, education and security. And in fact, those who prefer an independent judiciary system or reject the franc CFA or prefer an Anglo-Saxon educational system or reject the gendarmes, they all tend to prefer independence. So they're the main findings. We'll look a bit further now. Most respondents were from the Cameroon, living in the Cameroon, that is, and the second largest set of respondents were those from the USA. I think it was noted that there was a survey done, I believe, in 2019 by Cardinal Christian Toomey, which had 1,000 respondents. Here at 3,749, we've got sufficient to do some deeper analysis and to get some results which are quite compelling. The survey respondents were asked for the root cause of the armed conflict, and the majority believed it was failed decolonisation rather than assimilation, marginalisation or Western imperialism. I think probably they're looking back towards the root cause, and this gives an indication that people have an understanding of what's really causing the problems there. I'll now pass you on to Mauro, who will take you deeper into the analysis and also look at some of the statistical methods we've used to dig out some of the more intrinsic and deeply hidden facts from the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So we can now go into more details and quantify the impact for each factor. So as we can see from this graph, the 86% of the survey Southern Cameroonians would like to have a fully independent state from the Republic of Cameroon. 7% of them chose the Federation, 4% opted for Confederation, and only 1% chose the government-sponsored spatial status. 80% of Southern Cameroonians would like to have a UN-mandated body as the best conflict mediator. 9% prefer Swiss-backed negotiations, and only 1% think that the government of Cameroon is a good conflict mediator. In terms of legal system, we can observe that 97% of the survey Southern Cameroonians would like to have a common law legal system, and this percentage can be split into two groups. 87% would like to have an independent legal system based on common law, and only 10% would like to opt for a common law system which is controlled by the central government. Only 2% of them would prefer a system which is based on civil law and controlled by the central government. On the educational system side, we can see that 42% would like to have an Anglo-Saxon system locally managed. 38% would prefer a new system, and 15% would like to have an Anglo-Saxon system controlled by the central government. So in this case, the response is not as clear as for the other questions. We can also see from this graph that 95% of the surveyed people would like to reject the CFA franc as the currency, and only 5% of them would want to keep CFA franc as their currency. 73% of the survey Southern Cameroonian would like elderly statesmen and women to play a more active role to end the armed conflict. Again, this percentage can be split into two groups. 52% prefer a more active advisory role, and 21% want them to take an active role in the negotiation. Only less than 10% prefer a leadership role for the elderly statesmen and women. 80% of the surveyed people would like to have a locally controlled police force, and 96% don't want gendarmes to be allowed in southern Cameroon. Now, let's have a look at the role of the traditional leaders. So we can see from this pie chart that 47%, so almost half of the survey South Cameroonians would like them to have a custodian role of culture and traditions only, and a sizable minority are happy they shift to play a more active role in the local administration as long as they're not part of the politics, as we can see from this 26% in the pie chart. These trends are steady across age groups, genders, and countries of residence. So, as we can see from these three-dimensional plots, the distribution of the form of the state and the conflict mediators doesn't change across age groups. And we have similar results when we look at the split by genders for the legal system, the form of the state, and the conflict mediators. So we can spot any real differences between males and females. These trends are steady also for the country of living, as we said before, so we can't see really any difference when we look at the form of the state and the legal system by country. These results have been validated with a multivariate multiple correspondence analysis. So this technique aims to reduce the dimensionality of the factor and capture the key drivers. So we have listed the main variables that we use for these techniques, and we group these variables into active variables and the supplementary variables. The active variables are those factors which are used in the actual calculation, so to extract the principal component, whereas the supplementary variables are just used to quantify the correlation between them and the principal component, but they're not used in the actual calculation. As we can see from this graph, so on the x-axis we have the first dimension, namely the principal component, so the first principal component, and on the y-axis we have the second dimension, the second principal component. We have highlighted three groups. The first group, so the green one, is composed of the educational system, gendarmes, the form of the state, and the currency. And we can see that all these four variables are strongly correlated with the first principal component. Whereas if we look at the red group, which is composed of the elderly statesmen and women and the traditional authorities, they are quite related with the second component, and we can see that the level of correlation is between 20% and 50%. We also highlighted a third group, the blue one, where we have the refugees indicator, the gender, and the police guns. So they are uncorrelated with both the first principal component and the second principal component. So this confirms that these variables should be kept as a supplementary variables because they're not adding any values to this analysis. This graphical interpretation is confirmed by some statistical tests. In this case, we used a V-test. In this slide, we have two tables, one for the first component and the second one for the second component. And we've shown both the p-values and the R-square. So the higher the R-square, the stronger the correlation between the factor and the component. As we can see from the first table, the first principal component is strongly correlated with the form of the state, the currency, gendarmes, the educational system, and the legal system. This means that the first component is capturing the organizational preferences, whereas the second component is capturing the the role of the key players. So the role of the elderly statesmen and women, and the role of the traditional authorities. We can see that the p-values are almost zero, and this means that these variables are really correlated with these principal components. So I would like now to you, Alan, to say something about the key conclusion.
Thank you very much, Mauro. The results here clearly indicate to us in an unambiguous fashion that there's a strong preference for greater autonomy amongst the Southern Cameroonians. This survey was large, a large number of respondees. We can be confident in the results, and it's probably, out of the surveys I've seen, the one that is the clearest in its indications. This is expressed in the choices here for the form of state, the legal system, the educational system, and security. So greater autonomy is point number one, crucial. Point number two, the trends are robust across multiple segments of society. We've cross-tabbed virtually every variable against every other, and we're very clear that we have robust results, and we've also dug down deeper, as Mara was explaining. And the trends across age, gender, country of residence, etc., they all show the same result and the same preferences from the respondents. And then finally, we see there's a strong correlation between the desire for full independence and preferences for the legal, economic, educational systems and the type of policing the respondents wish for. So one overriding result here then is a search for greater autonomy, and that's come out from all aspects of the survey, and mainly from all the respondents, in fact, however they're examined. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, all.